had chose to go to Rafah at the southern point in the Gaza Strip, near the Egyptian border. She recognized that there was danger. When she made her first phone call home on her cell phone, I could hear the trembling in her voice as she listened to shelling outside the house where she was staying. And Craig and I, thousands of miles away, could hear the shelling by telephone. Then her emails to us began, and she began to open our eyes to what was happening in Israel-Palestine, and particularly in Rafah. She wrote, "I couldn't even believe that a place like this existed. But even more, can you believe there are children here? Forget the fear. They tell me that at night. Forget the fear. I am ashamed that I am scared for my own body and dying anonymously inside a house in one of the most populous places on earth where children die as martyrs of the occupation, which we pay for quietly without ever knowing their names. We need more people. I love all of you. Rachel." I went to a rally a few days ago in Han Yunis in solidarity with the people of Iraq. Many analogies were made about the continuing suffering of the Palestinian people under Israeli occupation and the upcoming occupation of Iraq by the United States. Not the war itself, but the certain aftermath of that war. If people aren't already thinking about the consequences of this war for the people of the entire region, then I hope they will start. Love you. Really miss you. I have bad nightmares about tanks and bulldozers outside our house, and you and me inside. Sometimes the adrenaline acts as an anesthetic for weeks, and then in the evening or at night, it just hits me again. A little bit of the reality of the situation. I'm really scared for the people here. In Gaza, Rachel slept at wells to protect them from demolition. She stood between Palestinian municipal water workers who were trying to repair the wells and the Israeli military towers from where shots would ring down, harassing workers and the internationals. She documented the destruction of Palestinian olive orchards, gardens, and greenhouses, as well as harassment of Palestinians at checkpoints. She worked with the children and the women and planned for connecting the people of Rafah and those in our community of Olympia through a Sister City project. She practiced Arabic with the kids and helped them with their English homework. ISM activists in Rafah worked to offer some protection for Palestinian civilian homes that were threatened by the Israeli military during a period when there were massive illegal clearing demolitions that destroyed over 1,600 homes in Rafah, those of 1/10 of the population of the city. Rachel told us that going to Gaza was one of the most important things that she had done with her life. She wrote, "Know that I have a lot of very nice Palestinians looking after me. I have a small flu bug and got some very nice lemony drinks to cure me. Also, the woman who keeps the key for the well where we sleep keeps asking me about you. She doesn't speak a word of English, but she asks about my mom pretty frequently, wants to make sure I'm calling you." I think that most of you know the story. On March 16, 2003, Rachel was crushed by an Israeli Defense Forces Caterpillar D9R bulldozer as she nonviolently stood between that bulldozer and a Palestinian home threatened with demolition. Members of the family who owned the home, 2 brothers, a pharmacist and an accountant, their wives, and their 5 small children watched through a crack in their garden wall as the bulldozer approached. There were 2 Israeli military bulldozers on the scene, as well as an armored personnel carrier, or APC. In each bulldozer were 2 soldiers, the driver and a commander, who is charged with being a second set of eyes. 7 international eyewitnesses were present. One, Greg Schnabel, testified this past March in Israeli court that during the hours that the activists were in the area, the bulldozers had come close to him and another ISM activist and stopped just short of hitting them, which led him to believe that the demonstrators were visible to the driver. Richard Purcell, one of the eyewitnesses from the UK, swore in his affidavit to the court the following. The bulldozer turned to face towards Dr. Samir's house. As it moved forward, Rachel knelt briefly in its path while the bulldozer was 20 to 30 meters away from her. The bulldozer was moving very slowly. As it advanced, its blade was placed in the ground and earth piled up in front of it. As the bulldozer reached the place where Rachel was standing, she began, as many of us did on the day, to climb the pile of earth. She reached the top, and at this point she must have been clearly visible to the driver, especially as she was still wearing the high visibility jacket. She turned and faced in my direction and began to come down the pile. The bulldozer continued to move forward at the same speed. As her feet hit the ground, I saw a panicked expression on her face and began to move forward, shouting and gesturing to the driver to stop. Something happened at this point to push Rachel forward onto her face. The pile of earth engulfed her, and she was hidden from my view. The bulldozer moved forward until its main section was totally over the place where Rachel had been standing. It paused and then backed over her and continued reversing until it was about 20 meters away. On March 19, 2003, Richard Boucher at the State Department reported in his daily press briefing, Prime Minister Sharon assured the President that the Israeli government will undertake a thorough, credible, and transparent investigation and report those results to the United States. On May 23, 2003, our family was told by Department of State staff that the Israeli military police had closed its investigation into Rachel's killing, that no charges would be brought, and that the Israeli Military Advocate General's office had closed the case. The Israeli military concluded that the two soldiers in the bulldozer that killed Rachel did not see her, though 7 international eyewitnesses indicate that she was clearly visible. Though the Israeli government declined to release the military police report of this investigation to the U.S. government and has never released the full report to them, staff of the U.S. Embassy and Department of State and family members were eventually permitted to read it. All noted numerous inconsistencies in what was in the report. On June 11, 2004, in response to questions from our family, Lawrence B. Wilkerson, who was the Chief of Staff to Colin Powell of the State Department, wrote of the Israeli report. Your ultimate question, however, is a valid one. Whether or not we view that report to have reflected an investigation that was thorough, credible, and transparent. I can answer your question without equivocation. No, we do not consider it so. On March 19, 2003, Richard Boucher said, when we have the death of an American citizen, we want to see it fully investigated. That is one of our key responsibilities overseas, is to look after the welfare of American citizens and to find out what happened in situations like these. During his confirmation hearings in 2008, the current U.S. Ambassador to Israel, James Cunningham, wrote in response to a question from then Senator Biden that immediately following Rachel's killing, President Bush telephoned Israeli Prime Minister Sharon to request this investigation and was given personal assurances by the Prime Minister that there would be one that would be thorough, credible, and transparent. Mr. Cunningham, now Ambassador Cunningham, stated additionally that Secretary of State Colin Powell, U.S. Ambassador to Israel at the time, Daniel Kurtzer, Deputy Chief of Mission, Richard LeBaron, Assistant Secretary